Hi, readers. I'm Jordan,
And I'm Katie.
and welcome to Not Another Heroine, the podcast where we break down the best and worst fictional heroines, those swashbuckling ladies who have to work a little harder than expected for their happy ending.
This week, we're finishing up the first half of The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah, otherwise known as Not All Compasses Point North and Other Weird Jinn Shit. Last week, we kind of ended off with Mazin, fake Mazin, bracelet, bangle.
Not Bengal.
I hear no difference.
Oh. If you recall, last week we had a whole
Bangle.
discussion on the Cincinnati Bengals.
It sounds the same. We are talking about the bracelet variety.
Moving on from the bracelets.
Anyways, so we had allegedly Mazin with his cute little bracelet on, and then poof, he pulls it off, and he is actually Omar, and he is asking Aisha to please go with his brother on their journey to the Sand Sea, which is the actual term for this shifting, scary desert that exists in the middle of their land, that the Jinn exist underneath.
That's kind of, it was a little vague because I got the impression that there was a Jinn city underneath the Sand Sea.
Yeah.
And then there's just Jinn who chill under the Sand Sea.
And then there's also a city not under the sand.
It's a little vague. There's a map.
Yeah. We highly recommend that you reference the map guide in the beginning of the book. And
we did not before we started this
No,
episode.
we did not. We went full send, no maps required. But anyway, our little quad group of Mazin, who is disguised as Omar.
And the only person who knows it's Mazin, not Omar, is Aisha.
Yeah.
This is going to get convoluted down the line.
Yeah. So when I say Mazin, imagine it's Mazin, but like dressed up as Omar.
Mazin is, so much sexier as Omar.
He all of a sudden like develops a personality. You're like, oh, actually, we'll probably get into that later. Well, no, I'm just going to talk about it now. Even Mazin imitating Omar has no personality. Did you notice that throughout this whole thing?
Spot on.
Because you still know it's Mazin. You're like, this isn't Omar.
Mazin says in his perspective, like, oh, I'm going to put on a smirk like Omar does. And it still just falls flat.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you got to have sparky words behind the smirk, man.
I always pictured, every time I read Mazin and Omar's interaction, the two brothers from the new Game of Thrones.
Oh.
The one with the bad eye and the, like, floppy older brother.
Yeah, the one that's just like running around in the city like, I don't want to be king, I'm just gonna like get drunk. And the younger brother's like, I could kill you right now and I'm heavily considering it, but somehow you're gonna stay alive and be the king, and I'm kind of pissed off about it. That's Omar.
Yeah.
Which is funny though, because Omar is the crown prince, right? They call him king, don't they?
Oh, I think that's a reference to Omar being the king of the 40 Thieves.
Oh, thank you for that.
I think Aisha is the only one who calls him king.
Oh, does she?
Hi, Your Majesty.
That's intriguing. But yes, part of this four group is Mazin, disguised as Omar. Little caveat on that. Aisha, who is protecting Mazin
because he's a dumbass.
Yes, correct. And then Luli and her Pedro Pascal dad, Kadir. Kadir.
We firmly established Kadir in the previous episode.
This mic turns on and I black out. I'm not gonna lie. But anyway, so they are setting out from Madine.
How are we going to do this with every name that comes up? Kadir, Cotter, Medine, Median.
Like I said, the mic turns on and I black out. So they're leaving the main city, again, destined for the legendary Sand Sea, and the lamp, which is definitely a lamp, but just a regular lamp with a Jinn inside. And so the Sultan gives them this huge celebratory send-off. I'm assuming he's doing this hoping that like tying Luli's success or failure with like public knowledge of her going out on this adventure will keep her from just like disappearing into the desert, because that's what I would do.
I had not considered that. I just thought Sultan was this ostentatious dick.
No, I think he's like, no, see, all these people think that you're going to go like save us from the Jinn. Like, you can't come back here unless you do.
That's wily. I like that.
That's at least what I thought. And maybe that's not what he was actually intending, but
that's probably more likely than my interpretation.
He's just, crazy, likes to throw a party kind of guy, which I could see that. But anyway, so on their way out, Lily has this kind of like nostalgic moment, thinking about the tavern keeper, Dahlia, in regards to the first time that like Lily went out into the desert trying to find relics. And they kind of have this cute interaction. And she says basically that she would, sell all the relics that she found and captured for a small fortune. And then she'd split it between them and they, cheer to small fortunes, which is kind of adorable. And it kind of shows that Lily is not really out for the money.
It seems like she's more out for the adventure.
Yeah. And she kind of seems to be looking for a family almost.
Oh, that's a really good point.
Yeah, because
do you get mom vibes from Dahlia?
Yes, but maybe not well receptive. Like why? Like why would this woman who's a tavern keeper who as we learn a little bit later is solely responsible for protecting this entrance into the underground market area, midnight market, why would she all of a sudden be willing to protect this whatever thief midnight merchant just because?
Maybe Lily is just
special.
She's that kind of special.
She's that kind
of
special.
We have stumbled on our special heroine.
That is, you can just fast forward through the rest of these episodes like we have come to the conclusion. But anyway, they have this like kind of cute, interaction, I guess. It still does not do much for our character development, but that's fine. But anyways, so they step off into the desert, and I think it's sunset, which is really the only reasonable time to set out into the desert to travel, which when you then think about it, makes sense. They only rode on their horses for like 3 hours and then stopped for the night. So not a great first day of traveling. But they stop at this place called the Green Oasis and kind of revealed, that the king of the 40 Thieves, which is Omar, but in this case, it's Mazin disguised as Omar. Confusing, but it's Omar, the king, who's actually a prince. He's also called the Stardust Thief, which is like a fun little tagline for the book title. But disturbingly, he has gained this title because Jinn blood shines like starlight. So it's like a silvery kind of color. And Abdullah writes, a killer is dressed in silver blood. And so that's why this guy is called the Stardust Thief. Kind of cool, but then immediately depressing.
It's a very dark title once you learn this point.
Yeah, you're like, okay, that's kind of fucked up. But Mazin, after his, crazy interaction with the Shadow Jinn, is, reasonably having some difficulty sleeping. He's having nightmares. And he's sharing a tent with Aisha. And Aisha just kind of like haphazardly reveals that when you kill a Jinn, they kind of like stick around in your nightmares for a little while and basically mildly haunt you, is the impression I've got. And so Mazin's like a little bit disturbed and he's like, when is that going to go away? And so he kind of takes a lap around. Oh my God. He's rapping. Yes. I would not be surprised. But no, he takes a lap around the oasis. But then when he gets back, he's like, that fire that is now in front of our tents was not there before. But don't worry, dear reader, or dear listener, I guess in this case. When he gets closer, he realizes it's just Kadir, who kind of like materializes out of the shadows. And he's like, oh, that's kind of like spooky, but maybe I just can't see that well. And it's like, no, it's because he is a Jinn. And Mazin's like, oh, I'm probably just tired. But it's like, no, he's literally, again, a Jinn. But you haven't figured that out yet. But they have this kind of like funky interaction where Kadir has the compass out and it's waving all willy-nilly. And Mazin's like, oh, you got like a broken compass there. And Kadir says, not broken, just precise.
So as a reader at this point, I'm like, Kadir definitely asked this compass what was up with Prince Mazin / Omar. That's what I took away
Oh,
here.
shit.
Like, that's why the compass was freaking out.
Yeah, because they're like, that's not Omar.
Mhm.
And Cotter's like, oh, really? That's
Yeah.
interesting. Huh. I didn't think about that. Well, anyway, this journey is immediately beleaguered by a dust storm the following day. And the group is immediately separated into individuals.
They did not plan right.
No. So they traveled for like what, 2 hours the first day. Okay, great. You wasted a whole day. And then the second day, there's a sandstorm. Awesome.
It's scary. Mazza needed time to recuperate from his scary nightmares.
Evidently. Well, he had a whole day, but a lot of other nightmare-inducing things happened during this day. So basically, the whole world is black. I don't know if any of our listeners have been in a sandstorm. I've seen them kind of like distantly when I've been like traveling. They're scary as fuck. Like it comes in dark, like you cannot see anything. It looks like this huge like cloud in the distance. Like you got me fucked up during this. And so Aisha's kind of describing it and she's like, the whole world goes black. I can't see anything. It's like stumbling around. And then all of a sudden the kind of like the dust clears for a little bit. A gust kind of stops. And she can't see anyone. And she's like, oh, fuck, I'm here by myself. But lo and behold, out in the dunes, off in the distance, she sees a figure that she assumes is the prince. And so she gets closer. However, all of a sudden, this figure materializes into her brother, her dead brother.
Oh, I wonder if this is a mirage.
This is one of the first of our red flags. There will be many.
So many red flags in this section.
Yeah. So she's immediately confused and she's like, that's funky. And so she says to herself out loud, the dead do not speak. And blah, 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 the visage materializes behind her. Also weird because your brother can now teleport and he's still also
I really
dead.
just need a replay of that sound effect.
I don't think that was exactly the same at
No,
all,
it's
but
still good.
But anyway, Aisha kind of is like, okay, that's too weird. This is probably a Jinn. And so she gets off her horse, which mistake number uno.
Okay, but also, why aren't they riding camels?
I don't understand that because camels have like special dual eyelids.
Mm-hmm.
So like they can have like one down during dust storms and stuff and then have a second down if they like need to close their eyes, but they can still see and have some kind of protection. Horses do not have that.
Mm-mm.
So I don't know what the fuck these horses were doing in the middle of a sandstorm besides like being blinded by sand. But
poor journey planning on this part.
Again. Yeah. So if you're like a horse trainer, please tell us if a horse would survive a sandstorm.
I mean, there's Arabian horses, like horses from the Middle East, right? But again,
how did they survive?
I don't know.
Yeah. Again, horse people. Please let us know.
Let us know. We're curious. We like camels. They're cute.
Yep. Mm-hmm. But she gets off her horse. And again, that's mistake number one, lady. And she climbs a dune that's kind of next to her. And again, as this like big sandstorm gust comes in and the world goes black, she kind of like takes a step and all of a sudden gravity comes in. And she's like, oh, fuck. And she kind of tumbles down the dune. Important side note, she loses one of her scarves as she is tumbling down this dune. She kind of checks in with herself when she hits the bottom and she's like, oh shit, okay, I lost my scarf. I'm super disoriented. I have lost all of my traveling companions, but I have my swords with me, so at least I could kill people if I needed to. So she kind of like dusts herself off metaphorically because again, still in the middle of a dust storm. But she realizes that she's going to go hunt this Jinn. And so she literally says like, so the hunt begins or something.
Yeah, she's like, nah, man, stop fucking with me. I'm going after you.
Yeah, but it's like also you're in the middle of a sandstorm and you have been separated from like literally your one sole responsibility, which was to take care of Omar's brother. Mm-hmm. And you love him, but you're just going to like go hunt this Jinn real quick.
Still, we like Aisha better than the others.
This is true.
Despite poor decision making here.
Yeah. So with that kind of lone, scary sounding sentence that Aisha leaves us with, we switch to Luli's POV. And we see that she kind of like immediately finds Kadir first through his magic Jinn fire, however that works. And he kind of leads her to a cave that he's discovered so they can hunker down until the dust storm settles.
Again, Kadir saving the day every single time.
Yep. Basically, because we soon discover that like Lily can't really do anything
She
herself.
doesn't do anything. And not in a cute way like our previous heroine.
Yeah, no, she like legit can't do anything. But she insists on shoving herself into rather dangerous situations by herself. And Pedro Pascal, Dad Kadir, is like, why do you keep doing this? Like, please stop. But anyway, so they're, hunkered down in the cave together. And then only a moment later, the prince walks in and he kind of immediately is like, where's Aisha? And Lily and Kadir assume that, like, while no, she's not here. She's obviously a very competent woman. She's probably okay. She probably found some other, cave to hide out in. And so they hunker down. They wait until the storm passes. And the next morning they set out and they're like, okay, we need to kind of find our missing thief. And so they look out into the distance and Kadir spots this like dark spot out on the horizon. And they think it could be like a cave or a person. It's like pretty far out. They're not sure. And so he's like, okay, I'll just go out and see them. You guys stay here. Which, why would they split up if they
keep splitting up? It makes zero sense.
This is literally like Scooby-Doo where you're like, don't do it. Like, but anyway, they don't listen to me as I'm screaming at this book. And so kind of Kadir leaves. And Mazin's like, oh, I want to get a better vantage point of all of this going down. So I'm going to climb this giant hill behind me. And Luli, thankfully, is like, what the fuck are you doing? But then he just continues on, whatever he's doing. And she's like, okay, well, I guess I have to go with you. And so they get all the way up to this dune. And they're like, wow, the view is amazing. And like, there's Kadir off in the distance. And then Mazin turns around and he's like, what is that? And it is the scarf covered by sand. And they are 100% certain that it belongs to Aisha. And it's like, that's not good. So she is not off in the distance where our...
She's almost certainly dead.
Yeah. That is not whatever black dot out on the horizon that Kadira is trying to go after. And so Mazin has this like weird hypnotized moment where he kind of like suddenly turns to the dune wall and he's like, what the fuck is that noise? And Lily's like, are you tripping balls right now? Like,
that is such a spot on description of Lily's interaction with him.
She's like, what the fuck? But then she kind of turned around to look at him and be like, dude, are you tripping? And he's gone. Just absolutely vanished.
Point. Mm-hmm. He like manically digs through the sand.
That is true.
Like a mad woman.
Meltdown.
Mad woman. Might as well be. It's Mazin.
As a woman, I find that offensive.
Sorry.
Might as well be a man. That my partner did say that we like trash talk men too much on this.
What?
Allegedly we come off as very like anti. Everyone is competent at the things they do except people that are incompetent.
That's an accurate statement.
I feel like that didn't really mean anything, but it's a statement regardless. So Mazin digging crazy into the wall, and then disappears. And Lily's like, what the fuck? And so she immediately panics, but she has this magic compass that can tell her exactly what direction things are in if she just asks. And so she's like, hey, magic compass, where the fuck is Mazin? And the compass gives her the very helpful answer of just pointing directly at the wall.
The wall of sand that Mazin just disappeared into.
Yeah, wall of sand, nothing there. And she's like, okay, so this is obviously some weird Jinn shit, TM, all in caps. She then faces a sort of dilemma. Does she go after Mazin into this weird Jinn shit, TM? Or does she wait for Kadir to get back at some unspecified time during which Mazin could be murdered and eaten by a Jinn?
Oh, eaten.
I don't know. I added it. It felt right. I don't know if Jinn eat humans, and I'm sorry for any Jinn listening. And they're like, we don't eat humans. I think they do. But regardless. And so she kind of panics and she's like, well, and as most heroines do, I can just handle this really quick and then pop out and,
know what I've got.
It'll be all totally fine.
This is the third time she's saved Mazin or tried to save Mazin.
That's true. And it was mostly successful. So she hasn't learned her lesson yet.
With whose help?
Kadyr's. Yeah, from a distance though, which I also thought was interesting, and I kind of wrote that in my book. In all of the action scenes so far, Kadyr is not there. He's like off somewhere else doing something, but then like magically can help her through the sword magic or whatever.
Or his lizard form.
That true. Yeah. So he's there, but not there. But anyway, so again, as any heroine, you know, does in these books, as they're, you know, want to do, she goes in after him. And then immediately we switch back to Mazin's point of view.
Okay, so I guess I'm just going to interject here for a second. And the reason why Luli's so frustrating, or all of these characters are so frustrating, is we don't know why they keep doing the stupid shit that they keep doing. Like, I want to know, Luli, why do you keep saving Mazin? All we get is, oh, this seems like the right thing to do. There's no, like, internal monologue about, oh, do I find Mazin attractive? And or actually in this case, Omar.
Oh, that's a fun twist.
Right? Like, why are any of these characters doing what they do?
I think we were texting about it, and you said it's all plot devices. It's not like character choices. It's like things happen to them and then they react. It's not them making choices and then, you know.
Yeah, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. That was past you making a very excellent point now.
Thank you, past me. Sometimes past me is very wise.
Very smart. But I agree, because we have no idea why she went in to save him. Because this is her perfect opportunity too. Now that I think about it, like, she just lost him. She could just go pick up her bodyguard
and go after the lamp for themselves.
Yeah.
And, like, crazy thief Aisha's gone.
Yeah. And if she thinks Mazin is Omar,
why not leave him behind?
Yeah, because he's a psychopath.
Yeah.
Okay, we unintentionally found a plot hole.
I
we'll just kind of skate
I don't
over
know
this.
if this was a good, like, if this was a deliberate structure on the author's part to maybe set up more character development through the rest of the books.
For Omar?
For all of them.
I can see that.
Or if this was just weak character development.
I don't know. I'm kind of leaning toward weak character development, but we'll see. So we switch back to Mazin's point of view, and we basically find out not all is good in the hood.
Really?
Yeah. He's in this like beautiful hallway, which, first of all, red flag, because why is there this beautiful hallway in the middle of like a dune in the middle of a desert? And then he kind of looks over at this like weird, funky mural, which turns into red flag number 2. Well, actually, probably red flag number 3, because the first red flag was, you know, falling through the wall. That was
I thought
a
the
dune.
scarf was red flag.
Oh, so he's on red flag number like 4 or 5.
Still doesn't learn.
All kinds of red flags. But he like looks over at this mural, and it's kind of like a fun description, because it's basically the 7 Jinn kings, and they're all kind of described in a different way. The main thing you should probably take away from this is that it's creepy as fuck.
Also, my takeaway from this specific scene, because there are parts in this book that I just don't remember because I didn't care enough. Like, sorry.
Vicious.
I am being a little mean. I'm sorry. But I just skimmed a lot of this because it wasn't very memorable. But this mural kind of made me think, oh, she's describing each of the 7 Jinn kings, who all are very different. It sounds like, oh, we're going to meet all 7 Jinn kings throughout the course of this entire adventure. Maybe not just in book 1.
Yeah.
Like, culminating in finding the actual lamp in book 3, but they have to get through the 6 other Jinn kings first.
Oh, shit. Yeah. But the mural has some bad guys.
Yeah, bad guys. That's it. That's all you need to take away.
The first bad guy of interest has a gold circlet of skulls. Just remember that, and you'll be fine. The hallway. So this is another red flag for our small basket of, you know, growing red flags. The hallway is weirdly quiet, and Mazin is like literally repeating to himself out loud, like, don't panic, you're going to be fine. Don't panic, you're going to be fine. And it's like, you are not going to be fine. But, you know, thankfully, he sees his mom.
Oh, mom's back.
His mom.
Dead mom is back.
His dead mom. Another red flag. There we go. Another one. Immediately. Another one. DJ Khaled voice. You were looking at me with blankness.
No, I'm just a little in shock that you went there.
You have to. You can't say another one without being like, another one.
Oh my God.
Another one.
Stop it.
Yeah. So we hit our 87th red flag of the novel. So he kind of immediately starts following her, which again, like another red flag. And she starts singing this like super creepy song that he doesn't recognize, but we as the readers, we kind of vaguely do. And so the song kind of goes, the stars, they burn the night. In hindsight, that doesn't really make sense, but the stars, they burn the night and guide the sheik's way. And it's kind of, vaguely on the tip of your tongue of like where this comes from. And if you're one of those people that like really reads books, you're probably like, Katie, like obviously it comes from this portion. But I only vaguely remembered what this was from. And it will become clear later, possibly in 1 to 2 seconds. So his mother, the creepy dead one that is, a little ominous. Like, why is she in this palace?
Never hits Mazen that this dead mom figure is creepy in any way. It's just mom.
And so he does have this like little kind of thought where he's like, wait a second, I'm in my half brother's body. How does she know it's me? And then he's like, oh, but it's okay. And then just kind of ignores yet another red flag, and he just kind of goes about his business. And so his mom is walking him into a throne room of sorts that we later find belongs to the Queen of the Dunes. And that's where that song came from, too, is about the Queen of the Dunes, who, again, in a second, we'll find out, like, who is that, Katie? So he gets to the throne room, and again, he's only kind of like mildly, very distantly aware that the ground is completely covered in bones. And it's like, again, red flag.
This is the second time Mazen has been led astray by a female Jinn.
No shit. Mm-hmm. Is he just like overly susceptible to their power, or is he just an idiot?
I think he's just an idiot. That's my default for Mazen.
Yikes. And so he's like a little bit concerned that there's obviously like 1,000 bones on the ground, but he's like, oh, that's fine. Like my dead mom's here. It's all good. And so he kind of looks into this throne room, and on the dais in the middle of the room is like a freaky gold circlet of sorts. And that's weird because did we just talk about a mural that had a Jinn
no foreshadowing
king there with a gold circlet of freaky bones? Weird.
Funny how that comes about.
Interesting. But he does not have any kind of red flags at this moment. He's obviously colorblind. And he's like, okay, so if I just possess this circlet, all of a sudden, this, realization, if I just have this circlet, all of my dreams will come true. And so he steps up and he grabs the circlet, and we're back to Luli's POV.
Oh, this is exhausting.
It's really fucking exhausting.
This whole scene, which could have been really interesting and exciting.
Yeah.
I just wanted to skip through.
Yeah. I was kind of confused too, because if you're listening and you've read the book, it's this whole chapter chunk is kind of questioning reality the whole time. Like they have a lot of points where they're like, are we in an actual hallway, or are we in this like beautiful hallway, or are we in this like decrepit hallway? And then they even have a moment where like, are we in reality, or are we in like an actual palace?
After they walked through a wall of sand.
Yeah. And so it's really confusing as the reader too, because you're like, I actually don't know like what kind of like laws of physics apply right now. So I could not tell you where they are.
And if that weren't confusing enough, the character, like the perspective shifting.
Yeah.
Because they're all now in the hall.
Yes. Yeah. Because Luli falls into the same hallway. And basically, because she's Luli al-Nazari, relic hunter, she understands that this whole thing is like really shady. And so she sees the mural and she's like, okay, there's a red flag. And she's like, it's a little too quiet. There's another red flag. But then she sees her dad and she's like, not a red flag. Despite the fact that this man is dead. And
maybe she and Mazen are meant for each other.
Evidently, because they just go running after, dead family members without a care in the world, in a land where Jinn tried to kill people. Anyway. And again, she's like, okay, that's like kind of weird that my like dead dog's in this hallway. But he's singing a song, and so everything is gonna be fine.
Oh, I just remembered.
Mhm.
There's something that we should maybe brought up earlier.
Mm.
So there's Jinn. There's
Mhm.
like normal Jinn, super
Oh.
powerful Jinn, and then there's ghouls.
Yes. Yeah.
And ghouls are an entirely different animal.
It's like a monster kind of freaky thing.
Yeah, like a step up from ghosts.
Yeah. Corporeal ghosts. Is that how you say that word?
I don't want to attempt to say that word.
That was my attempt, and you're not going to get another one.
Yep.
Touchable ghosts.
Yep. Tangible.
Yeah, tangible ghosts.
Okay.
Tangible, touchable.
That's the word
ghosts.
I know how to say.
But yeah, there's ghouls and there's Jinn. This will come up momentarily. So she's kind of like, I'm gonna trust this guy, my dead dad, who's singing in this weird random hallway. That's probably, infested with Jinn. It's gonna be fine. Until she sees another mosaic. And interestingly, this mosaic has a bunch of like drowning, fucked up sailors, and they're all reaching for this woman off in the distance with white skin, black eyes, and a circlet of golden bones. Interesting.
Another circlet.
Another circlet. It's almost as if it's the same circlet, and that is the bad guy you're about to face. Like, I've played a video game or two. Like, I know how this works.
So much resentment built up, Katie.
Just a little bit. But in that moment, she's kind of like looking at this mural and she's like, oh, that's weird. And so she goes to touch it and she's like, wow, it's so cold. And she's like, it's cold, but the iron magic resistant cuffs on my hands are burning hot. And that normally happens when there's like Jinn magic afoot. Oh shit. That's not my dead dad. That's some kind of crazy Jinn magic thing going on.
Is that no, don't say it's a red flag.
It was, in fact, a red flag. And so she kind of like breaks out of the trance or like breaks out of the enchantment of the Jinn magic. And the room goes black and like something tries to grab her and she kind of like swings out a crazy elbow and she's like, oh my God, this is scary. And she's like running around and flailing. But then she kind of like crashes into like someone else in this like tangle of limbs and arms and hair. And I'm assuming like knives at some point too. But then, oh shit, it's Aisha. But it's like actually Aisha, not like dead ghoul Aisha.
They have a whole little interaction trying to confirm that the other one is real.
It's like, are you in fact here?
Can I stab you just to be sure?
Yeah. Well, that happens later. We'll get to that. But anyway, they're kind of like freaking out, like, oh my God, are you real? And then Aisha throws a dagger and you're like, oh fuck, she's gonna die. But instead it hits a freaky monster like right behind Luli, and we're like, oh shit. And that was the figure that was her father, but then we find out it was a ghoul the whole time. And so I feel like at this point is when Luli and Aisha kind of realize like there's all kinds of fucked up shit happening. Like, where's Mazin? We need to get the fuck out, like GTFO. They kind of come to that realization, but then they're like, how do we get to Mazin? Because he's like lost off somewhere.
How do we find our lost man child again?
They need to put that man on a leash.
Uh-oh, we're hating on men again.
Akko. I mean, it would happen with women sometimes, but we're normally the ones like holding
only in a target
children. Yeah. But yeah, they're like, how the fuck do we find him? And then Luli kind of has this like weird thing and she's like, oh, we should like hum the song that like all these freaky things are saying. And like, I was just like, girl, what the fuck are you talking about? But she does it and then like, ahoy, it works. Because this is the toy.
That's what you choose to go with.
I don't know. We're in the Twilight Zone. Like, nothing is real, both literally and metaphorically, I think. But anyway, they walk in between the real world and not the real world. And you can tell probably as a listener that I'm failing to explain this in a great way because I too am failing to understand how this all works. It feels like there's magic, but there's also not magic, and they're in a palace of sorts. But anyway, you just kind of black out for a second, and then all of a sudden you're in the throne room. Woohoo! And there's Mazin, about to grab the circlet, and then cut scene where you have like a slight intermission where we finally hear what the actual tale of the Queen of the Dunes. And again, this is like the whole like parchment-y, breakaway story where it's in a like storyteller point of view. And so basically what happens in this story, and it's hard because I feel like there was more characterization.
I
in this.
always want to know more about the characters in these little short stories than
Yes.
the actual characters.
Yep,
in the book.
that says a lot that they're more engaging in these like 4-page little tidbits.
Which
than they
says a
are.
lot about how good the writing is. And
Yeah.
it's just
Yep.
it's a
Just
plot structure, characterization
missing
thing.
something. But essentially the story starts that there is this slave, Naji, who escapes her master and kind of finds herself in the middle of the desert. And she's like, oh, fuck, like, what am I going to do? But then she kind of stumbles upon this wondrous, amazing palace just kind of in the middle of the desert. And inside, there's this like especially beautiful woman sitting on a beautiful throne. And the woman is like, hey, if you put on this golden circlet, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, you'll all of a sudden be able to, have all of this power and you can have whatever your heart desires. And she's like, oh shit, really? Okay. And so she pops it on and she's like immediately filled with all this crazy, horrible power. And she's like, I want to get motherfucking revenge. Which fair.
I had a hell yeah moment on it. So I'm like, yeah, you put that circlet
I'm like,
on.
yep, you absolutely killed that man. And so she does. She goes out into the desert. She finds her master, who's surrounded by soldiers trying to hunt her down, and basically fucking kills all of them, except horrifically, they all come back as her undead army. And she's like, this is super fucked up. Like, I don't know how I feel about this. And then, from inside her brain, the Queen of the Dunes is like, sucks. I am now going to possess your body and I'm going to like take over all of the surrounding cities with my giant undead army. I got all kinds of like cool vibes.
I know. This is a cool story. Like, this is supposed to be the villain, like the boss that they're battling. But
yeah, it's like, but I like her more than you.
Very much so.
Yeah. So basically, the queen kind of takes over Naji's body and kind of shoves Naji's consciousness into like a far corner. And she's like, anyways, I'm finally free. I'm going to do whatever the fuck my heart desires. And you're like, girl, I kind of feel that. Except we have this guy, Munakid.
Oh, God.
Munakid.
Munakid?
It does not sound as good when I say it.
Yeah,
Mooney.
Oh.
We're just gonna go with that because otherwise I'm gonna butcher this poor man's name, and he's kind of like the hero in this little short novel. So Mooney, he's like, okay, I've had enough of this psychoticness and this woman who keeps killing people and then bringing them back as zombies, which again, fair. That is a completely honest assessment. And so he's like, I'm going to go to the palace. I'm going to gain her trust and I'm going to try to figure a way to get us out of this. And so he does. And then he has this little moment where he's like, oh my God, your body is so beautiful. Like, what inspired you? And she's like, oh, I'm like, possessing this human person as like my vassal on Earth. And like, that's how I'm doing all this shit.
Which is dumb. Like, that is a dumb admission. Like, why don't you just say, oh, thank you. I was born this way.
Especially because she like bamboozled the Naji into just giving her body. But then all of a sudden this man comes in and you can't like pull it together for a moment. And so obviously our man Mooney is like, bingo, that's how I killed this woman. And so he slips into her room that night, which again, if you're some like kind of like crazy Jinn Ifrit,
Mm-hmm.
so like Jinn King, you're telling me like you can't realize when someone sneaks into your room that you are not expecting.
She's blinded by his flattery.
Which that's fair.
Yeah.
It's like, there it is. Understand. And so he kind of sneaks into her room and snatches the circlet off of her neck. And immediately Naji kind of like comes back into her body. She's unpossessed and he snags her and he's like, we got to go. And so they go hang out in a cave until this like sandstorm hits. It clears away. And then, they have successfully evaded the Queen of the Dunes.
Okay. Like you said earlier, this could have been its own novel.
Yeah.
Like Naji's story is super cool.
It's fun because again, in this like 4 pages or something, I had more character description. Like, okay, cool. We got this like downtrodden slave who's like, no, fuck my master. I'm going to like fuck this dude up. And this lady's like, sure, but it'll come at a price. And then it's like, okay, yeah, that's like reasonable. Like, go fuck him up.
Mooney. Maybe Mooney's like this long lost love that like
Yeah.
where did my friend Naji go? And he hunts her down, then realizes, oh, it's the Dune Queen.
Yep.
Let's fuck this bitch up.
Yep. And then you can even have some like spin-off series where like Naji's kind of pissed off because she's like, yeah, I was being possessed, but at least I was like powerful because, you know, I spent my whole life as a slave. And Mooney's like, you're kind of fucking psychotic. And then they have some kind of like enemies to lovers moment. Done. Chelsea Abdullah, that's book 2 and book 3.
You're welcome.
But anyway, let me trigger my spooky voice. And there the circlet waits in this, you know, deserted
I am
dune.
finding it hard to be scared of your spooky voice.
I'll try to make it more spooky, but I think it's just going to get more stupid. But anyway, the circlet is awaiting in this scary palace in the dunes for, you know, the next 100 years for its next victim, who is Mazin. Unsurprising. Because like as he's about to put it on, he's like, you know what? This whole thing is like a little sus. And I'm feeling kind of pressured to put this on. And like, I'm kind of concerned about that. And the circle's like, no, what are you talking about? Just like put us on. Like nothing bad's going to happen. And he's like, no, I am going to throw this on the ground. And then basically it triggers some kind of like freaky rampage of ghouls. And then like our man Mazin cannot swing a sword, cannot
He's
fight.
never done it before.
No. So you can imagine that this is like not going well until Lily and Aisha like pop up. And it's like, okay, they have come to save the day and save this man from himself and from ghouls. And so they kind of have some like hero shit, except all of a sudden, you know, Luli spots the golden circlet on the ground and she kind of like becomes entranced. And then Mazin's like, that's not good because she's going to save me. And so he tries to stop her and the two get into like a little kerfuffle.
Just a slight kerfuffle in the middle of a ghoul-laden palace.
Yeah, that's not bad at all. And it's not going well until Mazin decides to stab her in the hand, which I would be so fucking mad. And that kind of like continues on for the next little bit of the book that she like her hand is fucked up because hand injuries are a big deal. Like all those little teeny tendons and like muscles and shit, they do not grow back easily.
No, they don't.
But thankfully she has a bodyguard who is a Jinn and his blood possesses
is he gonna come
properties.
and save her again?
Yes, he does. Both in that instance and also because he like inhibits her like blade and then fucks up all of the ghouls with the fire magic in something to that effect. Anyways, they defeat all the ghouls. Aisha pops up and she's like, okay, I'm gonna grab this circlet and then bro, like we gotta dip out. And so they sprint out of there as like the whole place is crumbling around them. Weirdly, Aisha is like totally unperturbed by this circlet that keeps like trying to possess people.
I think that's a good thing to remember for probably later on.
Oh, I could see that. Yeah, because Aisha is unfazed. She's like, this is a motherfucking like gold ass circlet. Why are you guys freaking out? And just shoves it in a bag.
Maybe she's immune to relics.
That would be fun.
Mm-hmm.
I was just assuming it was like her like crazy personality of like,
I have enough power as it is. I don't need this stupid circlet. Yeah.
But also that she's so like no nonsense. She's like, circlet, shut the fuck up. And it's like, okay.
Actually, yeah, if Aisha is just as badass as the Queen of the Dunes.
That would be a crazy power couple though. If she's like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to be
That'd
crazy
be kind of
for a
hot
while.
Power couple though.
Yeah. Okay. You heard it here first. We ship. We're getting a wild tangent, but we ship Aisha with the Queen of the Dunes.
Yep. Sounds good to us.
Checks out. Anyways, the place is crumbling around them. Lily's bleeding out of her hand. But then all of a sudden, Lily wakes up in Dime? I feel like it needs one of those like.
There's like an extra, like half a vowel. Daheim?
Daheim?
No, I think that's very wrong.
Dime. I think Dimey's wrong too. Dime. We'll just go with dime. Yep. So Lily wakes up in Dime. And thankfully it's basically like Kadir roasting the shit out of her. Like, hey, why do you keep running away from me and getting into danger? And then I have to save you. It has not gone well so far.
Any of the times this has happened.
Literally 0 of the times. So can you please stop? And but then he's like immediately like, but I'm also kind of like softy dad vibes going on, and he's like, give me your motherfucking hand, and he cuts himself open and like heals her, as I talked about earlier. Except he kind of explains to her that the like freaky Jinn that they interacted with was this like Ifrit, the highest class of Jinn that are, the Jinn kings. And it's like, that's why everything was so fucked up for, a little bit. But remember that because they still have this golden circlet in their possession.
Also, something that kind of confused me until I referenced back, it's not, Kadir's very specific to say that, oh, you guys are wrong with your human names for our kind. Like Jinn King is not correct. It's Ifrit. And that could be man or woman.
I do like that because they keep calling it a Jinn King, but this woman is the queen of the dunes. And like, I'm all about like women being called king because like fuck the male connotation behind that. Again, we're getting all like male hatey.
We're not trying to do that. We promise.
But also like, let's be grammatically correct about whatever the Jinn like to call themselves. All about, that kind of like representation. Anyways, though,
moving forward.
Yeah. So he gives her this little kind of like history lesson. But the next day we get Kadir looking at this little note, and Lily is like, hey, what is that? And then he's like, oh, it's just, a little note from this guy named Ahmed bin Walid.
Remember Ahmed from
the Ahmed
mentioned twice in our, part 1 of this book. Finally arrives.
Yes. And she immediately gets all like weird TM, like, the like, ew, I don't know like what to say in response to that. Like, I don't like this guy. And he's like, you're literally blushing and smiling. And she's like, no, I'm not. And then runs away. But then later that day, obviously, because the note was an invitation to the Wali's palace, and the Wali is Ahmed bin Walid.
Wali meaning like governor?
Yes, roughly? I think so. Because it's someone under the Sultan, but it's someone appointed by the Sultan, I think is how that works. And so it's like, okay, like we have finally arrived at our romance, potentially.
I certainly hope not.
I agree with that statement because I hope not as well. They get to the Wali's palace, Ahmed's palace, and we get another delightful, and I'm like being sarcastic when I say delightful, description of these like fucked up haunted woods, like palace courtyards that they have, that are all like beautiful and green, but that literally all comes from spilled Jinn blood, which is fucked up if you're just walking through it. But to make it more fucked up and freaky, he has a bunch of like statues of Jinn being murdered in various like poses. And that is not great.
Just a refresher. The whole planet world thing would be a barren wasteland without the blood of the Jinn creating these little oases. That's how all of these cities pop up, basically.
Yes. And also interesting that it's only rich people that have access to these little rich green areas. Anyway, but as we kind of like start to connect the dots, we realize that Luli's apparent little fling, love interest is a Jinn hunter.
That's inconvenient considering Kadir's status.
As a Jinn. Yes, that is interesting, isn't it? Yeah. So enter in the mixed emotions. And she's like, I don't know how I feel about you. And also enter in Ahmed. And he's kind of immediately seeking some sort of answer to some sort of question that he asked her earlier off page. And, the author hasn't really like said what this like question is, but you get all kinds of like immediate, like that's suspicious. Like, what kind of question is he asking you as a man?
Like, is this do you want to be one of my 10 girlfriends or do you want to be my wife kind of question?
Yeah. We soon find out, like what it is. But they sit down for some food and wine. And I will admit, we had this like really cute interaction in the book right here, where like there's a servant that is pouring everyone in their little group wine. But Ahmed stops him like right before he goes to pour wine into Luli's cup. And he has like what I'm imagining is this like suave, sexy, like, let me serve you myself tonight. That's a quote. That's not me just saying that. And it's like, okay, so it makes sense that, you know, despite Luli having this, you know, basically family member that is a Jinn, she's like, but this guy is hot.
I think that is her general impression. Like,
yeah,
because we never really get any more insight other than, oh, Ahmed, sweet Ahmed. It sounds like it's like an infatuation because Ahmed is a good looking dude.
I could see that because she never reveals why exactly she likes Ahmed. Like, there is never any kind of like internal monologue about what exactly they see in each other, which again kind of like points to infatuation, but like you gotta have something for us as the readers to just kind of skip over
to latch
the fact
onto.
that
Yeah,
to just skip over the fact that he's like a Jinn hunter and your best friend is a Jinn. Like,
oh, and remember who she's traveling with. Supposedly Omar
is also a Jinn hunter,
like king of Jinn hunters.
Yeah. So you got some hurdles to, you know, clear, and they're not being cleared right now. But anyway, Ahmed kind of like steps away after this like cute little interaction or whatever to go see to his other guests, because he's still a Wally. And Lily is immediately all business, and she's like, hey, so you know that like golden circlet that we found in that like weird palace? I kind of think you should hand it over to me, because we all recognize here that it is very sketchy and super weird. And I kind of need to like hold on to it because I don't know what y'all are going to do with it. And I was just like, no. And that's it. And so,
end of story.
Yeah. And then Ahmed kind of comes back and he gets everyone to stand up and dance. And Mazen and Aisha use this as an excellent opportunity to GTFO. And so we get another opportunity for Luli and Ahmed to kind of like interact and have a bunch of, you know, little like nerve-wracking touches and whispers while they're dancing.
There's no good tension in here.
No. Like I feel stressed out when I was reading it, like, you know, and I don't think this is a like experience unique to women, but those people who are too aggressive when they're like hitting on you, and it's like, I feel uncomfortable but I don't want to blatantly turn you down because I'm like stressed out and like danger, obviously. That's how I felt reading this. And I know that Luli is like kind of into Ahmed, so there's probably not that like scary vibe. But when I was reading this, I'm like, he is being kind of forceful,
very
about
pushy.
his, very pushy. And it's also here that we see that Ahmed asked Luli to marry him. And again, it's like that's kind of sketchy because like
your first
pushy.
answer should have been no. Like your close family member who saved your life is
multiple times.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. At the beginning when her whole family was murdered, and then continually through their adventures. And so she's kind of like struggling with this question, obviously, because on the one hand, her best friend is a Jinn, and then on the other hand, like I guess he's hot. But she's kind of torn because she's like, if I say yes, I'm betraying my best friend and I don't know what that means for us. But then if I say no, it kind of like ends his interest in me because it puts a definite, like, we are not together. So she wants to kind of continue to live in this gray zone, basically. And so she kind of shoves him off a little bit, but then at the end, Ahmed is like, oh my God, your hand, like what happened? Like, you should tell me about it tonight when we like catch up and talk. And I imagine he kind of does like an eyebrow wiggle. Books love to use that term, and I still did not know what an eyebrow wiggle is.
Is it like a one eyebrow like that? Or
I never
connected the dots. In case you're curious, I just wiggled my eyebrow at Katie.
But it was more of like a single eyebrow raise. Is that an eyebrow wiggle?
That is an eyebrow raise.
Yeah.
And then
she's lifting one eyebrow.
And then you can
she just tried to move the other eyebrow. Maybe that's an eyebrow wiggle.
I don't know. Wiggle's probably not the right word, though.
Yeah, but, you know, unclear if there's any kind of, like, eyebrow wiggle. But I'm basically just being snooty about the fact that he's obviously asking her to, like, hook up.
Come back to my place.
I got. And she kind of, like, panics, and she's like, not tonight, and then dips out. And that sounds vaguely familiar to our girl Mel from our last book.
Yeah,
the
full
whole
panic mode.
I'm just gonna panic and leave
Mhm.
because Mel does that like 15 times. But it's more endearing when she does it than
Except
Lily.
I think in Mel, in this situation, there wouldn't even been a consideration of Ahmed. Like, oh no,
Yeah.
you kill my people?
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Yeah.
Like,
She's, yeah. This isn't a Mel like love fest, but
Mhm.
it kind of is because she's very like aggressive about her views.
Mhm.
I wouldn't say willful, but
Thanks for bringing us back
I'm
to
still
that.
bitter about that. Anyway, back to Lily.
Back to Lily. So bitter.
I'm just a little sad. But it is kind of like refreshing though, because the next day we get this kind of like interaction between Mazen and Ahmed. And Mazen kind of observes that he's like never liked Ahmed. He says that he is a person that smiles too much. And it's all kind of sus, and he's kind of like very hesitant when he's talking to Ahmed. But remember, Ahmed thinks that Mazen is Omar.
Mhm.
And so Omar and Ahmed are like buddy buddy. You know, they killed Jinn. They talk about their conquests. But Ahmed is kind of having this like sus moment where he's like, I kind of imagine Little Red Riding Hood, where she's like, "Oh, your like teeth are so pointy, grandma."
That's perfect.
Because like Ahmed is like, "Oh, that's a flashy cuff. Like that's kind of odd. Like you're not really into gaudy jewelry." And Mazen's like starts to sweat, and he's like, no, this is just like, you know, some like family bling, like totally normal." And Ahmed's like, "Oh, how strange. You know, I thought that the only jewelry you used to like to wear is, you know, the ring or earring that your mom got you, but that seems to be missing."
Mhm. And yet you're wearing a
Strange.
bangle.
Yeah, bangles. And so Mazen's like really sweating at this point, and he's like, "Oh my god, hey, look what I found!" And he pulls out the circlet, which
What
I am at a
possessed
loss
him
for
to think that
words.
this was a good idea?
I am going to show this man that I'm rubbing my face, if you were wondering. I'm going to show this man I'm mildly suspicious of this circlet, which almost possessed me and then also almost possessed Luli. And I have like vague inklings belongs to the Queen of the Dunes, who like I love stories. So I know that that was like a bad gal. But I'm just going to show it to this guy and be okay with that.
Again, Mazen is an idiot.
Yeah. And so he kind of like tosses it over, and Ahmed's like, "Wow, this is like crazy." But then he kind of like switches the topic back to Lily, and he's like, "Oh, Lily is like a candle in the night," which I don't think I know what that means.
She's the one source of light and joy in a field of darkness.
Oh, interesting.
I gagged a little when I said that.
Yeah. That's how he meant it, though. I imagine he said it like that. You know what I mean? Very like smarmy, sleazy kind of. But Mazen has a very similar like reaction that I did, and he's like, "What the fuck?" She's just mad all the time. Really don't understand the appeal that you're talking about. And then he kind of makes this like snippy comment when Ahmed's like, "Oh, like we're a match made in heaven, you know, we belong together." And Mazen's like, Lily is a wanderer, and like the only thing she's married to is the desert, my man.
This is Mazen's one point of clarity.
Yeah. I was about to say something very inappropriate, but he has some kind of clarity. And Mazen is like, "Okay, like we're not going to continue fighting." You know, and he kind of stands up to go. And then Ahmed is like, "Oh, before you leave, just remember that tonight we have that whole like party thing with all of the other thieves that are just going to happen to like be here."
They use, sorry to interrupt.
No, yeah.
They use thieves and Jinn hunters interchangeably.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thieves because they're stealing Jinn treasures, maybe?
Yeah, maybe.
Something to that effect. But yeah, Ahmed's like, "Hey, Omar," who is Mazen, "you got to come to this party. You can like talk up all of your conquests, all the shit that you've been doing on this like wild trek from the Sultan." And then Mazen fucks up basically, and he's like, "Oh,
you don't say."
You know, if I have the time, I'll be there." And Ahmed immediately is like, "What?" Omar would never miss an opportunity to brag that is strange. And then Mazin's like, okay, like, bye, I gotta go. And GTFOs. And that is where we are going to stop. Mazin scooting out of the door, like, oh no, I'm almost about to be caught by this man that I think smiles too much. Yes. End scene.
I think it's a good stopping point.
Mazin
had a good point. Ahmed is smarmy.
I love that word, smarmy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ahmed is smarmy. Mazin is a baby.
Stick around for part 3, where hopefully things go up from here. We don't know.
I hope so.
Like, we just don't know what's going to happen yet.
No.
So we're keeping our fingers crossed that things improve. Maybe we get some more insight into Luli's character.
Potentially. Hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. So from our shelf to yours.
We'll see you on the next page. Hi, readers. If you'd like to help us pick our next book, send us a message on Instagram.
Or if you'd like to just listen, we post new episodes every Monday on Spotify, Amazon, or Apple Music. Thanks for listening.